When the Raptors traded for Jakob Poeltl at the 2023 NBA trade deadline, it sent a message to everybody that this team is intent on winning and making the playoffs. And to help with that playoff push for the rest of the season, the Raptors made the move to sign Will Barton. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing what impact can he really have on the team, and if he can find the magic that he had in Denver that made him such a threat as a scorer and, more importantly, as a shooter. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? It's Jacob here, back with Amateur Hour Sports. For Raptors videos, live streams, and more, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You can help me on my road to 14,000 subscribers, and you find yourself enjoying this video along the way, drop a like to show your support. But we're going to be talking about Will Barton, going a little bit more in depth today in the video than we did in the previous video, where we talked about our first reactions. My first reaction to the Raptors signing Will Barton. I made that like immediately as soon as I found out he was signed, made that video. So putting a little bit more work into this one to go through Will Barton's game. What went well for him in Denver that made him such a successful player, and what went wrong for him in Washington that made him such a player where he got waived after playing 40 games there. He came off the bench in every game. He saw a huge minute drop with Washington than he had consistently saw with Denver for the better part of a decade. How could a player fall off so much, and what version of Will Barton can we expect to get for the Raptors? This season, the Toronto Raptors, Will Barton said it best yesterday. Everybody knows that this is a team that is better than their record suggests. You know, Will Barton, in his first interview with the Raptors media, kind of buttering us up a little bit, but there is acknowledgement from Barton and apparently the rest of the NBA that this is a good basketball team, and Will Barton is kind of relishing the opportunity to play here. He understands that this is a team that is intent on getting to the playoffs. Right now, sitting in a play-in position, but two vital games coming up against those pesky Washington Wizards, so a little bit of inside intel potentially being provided by Will Barton for the next couple of games. But these games are going to have huge ramifications on the seeding for the play-in tournaments. 7th and 8th seed, you get double elimination. 9 and 10 seed, you got to win 2 games in a row if you want to get to the playoffs. Better yet, if you are the 7 seed, well, you're hosting that first game, and it could just be a one-and-done scenario where you win your game and you are into the playoffs. So, Masai Ujiri has recognized that there was 2 really big areas of concern. I'd say 3 really big areas of concern with this Raptors team. Number 1, rim protection, sorted. Number 2, backup point guard, yeah, still a problem. Number 3 definitely was the shooting. The Raptors really cheaped out on acquiring shooting in the offseason, not in the sense that, you know, they didn't want to pay anybody, in the sense that there just wasn't really a lot of room to get everything. So what the Raptors did, they went out and acquired Jauncho Herhahngomez. They got him in free agency and were relying on him to bring in a lot of the shooting for this team. Now, that just did not happen from Juancho. Juancho, already not a great defender, doesn't do much else. The Raptors were just willing to, you know, forgive those defensive deficiencies to bring him in as a shooter, but he struggled very much to shoot here. So the Raptors, with 19 like playoff style games, like the next 19 games are so vital to the season. It's all going to feel like maybe a playoff game because each win is going to matter so much. The Raptors want to help their team out as much as possible. Getting Will Barton is seemingly going to do that, but question marks now arise of how much of an impact he's going to have. What his impact is actually going to be with this team. Because if you go back to the 40 games he played with the Wizards this season, well, it would seem there's not going to be a ton of help coming to the Raptors. After starting consistently in his career with the Denver Nuggets, he moved to Washington where his role was very much diminished, and he turned into a player that lacked a lot of efficiency and especially lacked a lot of defense. In his minutes, he did average 7.7 points per game, 2.4 assists, 2.8 rebounds, with a very ugly field goal percentage at .386, just under 39%, but what we do want to see replicate is that 3-point percentage, which is just under 38%. The free throw percentage is solid, something that you can definitely rely on in those situations. But how did this player go from a 15-point per game player in Denver in the 2021-2022 season, where he started every single game, was efficient, doing great things? How did he all of a sudden turn into this player who struggles to hit his 2-pointers, who struggles to get minutes? He's dropped from 32 minutes all the way down to 19 minutes per game with the Wizards. And in going through a lot of what Wizards fans have discussed since waiving the player, it would seem that some of the biggest things are, first of all, his defense is not very good. His defense is something that needs to be hidden. Now, if you have a team that is capable of hiding the defensive deficiencies, it's fine enough to have him on the floor. So from a Raptors perspective, we're a team that definitely prides ourselves on our defense. A lot of great defensive players in this team. We have the better ability to hide Will Barton than maybe perhaps the Wizards were able to do. And something that happened in Denver that made him such a successful player there was also he had a little bit more of the range to be the secondary creator. He is somebody who can create his own shot, definitely come off of screens and make some plays. And also the catch and shoot threat is going to be there for the player. As we saw with the 3-point percentage, that was still there this season with the Wizards. But just to show you how much of a sharp contrast there's been from this season Will Barton compared to just last season Will Barton, let's take a look at these statistics from the Denver Nuggets season. So as I mentioned, just under 15 points per game in Denver. With the additional 12-13 minutes, you also see more assists at just under 4, just under 5 rebounds per game. And this is where you see a difference. The field goal percentage was much higher in these Denver days and consistently was throughout his tenure with the Denver Nuggets. It was at 43.8 last season with a 3-point percentage a little bit lower at 36.5, free throw percentage relatively the same at just above 80%. So those are good numbers. And I remember in the offseason when Will Barton was moved to the Washington Wizards in the deal that also brought KCP back to Denver, I thought that Denver not very much, but I thought Denver overpaid to acquire KCP. But I believe they overpaid for the fit that KCP brought to the Denver Nuggets. And you know what? I respected that from the Wizards' perspective, upgrading the players that they're getting back in the trade. And I respected it from a Denver situation where they wanted to fine-tune their roster and find the right players to fit with Nikola Jokic especially, but also guys like Jamal Murray and to a lesser degree, MPJ. So I thought the Wizards got a pretty good deal here, but evidently it just did not work out for Will Barton in a Washington Wizards uniform. The Raptors, who maybe for the lack of better term, I would hope they'd go all the way to saying they were desperate to bring in shooters, but there was certainly a want and there certainly was a need to bring in shooting. So with these numbers here, the impact Will Barton is going to have on the Raptors, can we expect more of these Denver numbers or can we expect more of these Wizards numbers? Well, for starters, we need to discuss the play time. Play time is going to be very significant into exactly what you're going to get out of Will Barton. And assuming health for the rest of the season for the Raptors, maybe quite foolishly, it's a lot deeper of a bench than it was before. Coming off the bench for the Raptors for the next 19 games with health being a factor is likely going to be Gary Trent Jr., Precious Achiuwa, Chris Boucher, and also Will Barton. Jeff Dowtin, I really thought he was going to keep his role, but if that Chicago Bulls game is any indication of what's going to go on with Jeff Dowtin, maybe he has lost his minutes. I do not agree with that decision, but if the Raptors were so intent on getting Will Barton, I imagine he is going to be in the 9-man rotation for his team. I mean, the guy signed like 4 hours before the tip-off against the Chicago Bulls and still featured for 4 minutes. Yeah, it was only 4 minutes, but he's still featured in the game. There has to be a good degree of confidence in the team to do that, and there has to be a big want from Will Barton to play competitive basketball. So I like the hunger from the player. I really like that out of the gate. Good first impression despite only seeing just 4 minutes of him playing, and he missed the one shot that he took. Regardless, the impact that we're going to see from the player minutes-wise, I think he's still going to get like 15 to 20 minutes per game. He's going to have to live with those minutes, but the minutes aren't the biggest deal. We just need a player who's going to knock down his catch-and-shoot three-pointers and still stay relevant when he's not doing those things. So, Will Barton has showcased throughout his career, he's a veteran now, that he can be a ball handler and a secondary scorer. The Raptors are going to give him repetitions in which he's going to be able to try and execute those things. So, I see success in those categories. There is nothing to suggest that he has lost his three-point ball in any way, his catch-and-shoot game in any way. That is going to be present. And especially for a Nick Nurse team, this is probably the biggest thing that is going to either factor into more minutes or less minutes, and that is his defense. Your defense for the Raptors, with the bench being, generally slim pickings of what the Raptors are actually going to choose to get into games for consistent minutes, your defense just needs to not take you off the floor. And there's quite a few players on this Raptors team where that is the case. A lot of this season, you point to some of the guards like Banton, Flynn. A lot of the time, their defense has just simply taken them off the floor. The same would reign in the recent stretch for Jauncho Herhahngomez for eventually being waived to make room for Will Barton. I expect his defense, once again, where it was with the Nuggets, not maybe quite to that degree. Maybe the age is showing a little bit more right now. Maybe the confidence is a little bit lower after struggling so greatly with the Washington Wizards. But I believe it will be good enough that the Raptors will be able to hide it a lot better than the Washington Wizards did. The Raptors need handling, especially in the second unit. They need shooting, especially, in the second unit, but all over the roster, all over the team, they need shooting. I suspect that Will Barton is going to elevate his game slightly to what we saw with the Wizards. I don't think this is a groundbreaking, completely franchise-defining signing. I don't think that in any way whatsoever, but I believe this is a player that when you're going into 19 games that are all going to have essentially playoff ramifications, especially the next two here, but it's going to be great experience for a lot of the young guys on this team. And hey, you have a player like Will Barton, 29 postseason games under his belt, a veteran presence, maybe an assured head in a lot of these situations. This is a guy who has skills that just the team is lacking. He provides things, especially shooting, that the team is lacking. I'm not expecting, absolutely not expecting anything ridiculous from Barton, but can we get 8 points a game off the bench, maybe even up to 10 points per game? Can we get just under 40% shooting from three, that catch and shoot threat, that he hits shots, but he also spaces the floor for his fellow teammates on the court? And can we get defense that doesn't play him off the court? I absolutely think all of these things are realistic for the player to provide to the team. So I like the aggressive move from Masai Ujiri. He made the decision at the trade deadline that the direction of this team was going to be forward. The direction of this team was going to be winning. And he's gone out and he's helped this team with their winning by acquiring a player that is going to help this team with a lot of the things that they have been lacking this season. If things go successfully, we'll see what the future holds to the player, if there is a future for him in Toronto. I would say potentially not, but hey, he can compete for a roster spot. Maybe we're getting a situation like that. At the very least, we have a player who can do a job. All right, what did you think of this video? What impact do you think Will Barton is going to have on this team? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. That is it for me for today. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video. It does make a difference. It does help us a lot with that YouTube algorithm. And make sure you are subscribed to Amateur Hour Sports for more content just like this. I recorded this video yesterday. I'm away Friday through Monday, so a couple videos coming out that I recorded on Thursday. If anything is off from a factual standpoint, I apologize. Just keep that in mind.